very good evening and welcome to Biz First in Focus. We are coming to you from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. And this evening in our studios, we've got Mr. Rohan Fernando. He is the past president of the Sri Lanka Tea Exporters Association. A very good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Mr. Fernando, first, of course, you are aware of the current political crisis in our country. I would like to ask you, how has this political crisis affected the tea industry specifically?
You see, the current situation where nothing is happening, a lot of changes are taking place on a daily basis. Not only the tea industry, no industry can take positive steps for development. For instance, investment in capital expenditure or expansion of your business, because you don't know what situation will arise tomorrow. So in that, the tea industry is suffering. Likewise, most of other industries in Sri Lanka are suffering. It's not only the tea industry. I would say it's too politicized. The whole economy is politicized, like they have politicized every aspect of our life in Sri Lanka.
So the problems that you say you face in the tea industry, has it been worsened by the political crisis, or was this the case before as well?
I think the one thing what we have realized in the export industries like tea is the devaluation of the rupee, the continuous slide of the rupee against the major currencies, the euro and the dollar. When that happens, we have external problems where the buyers ask for price reduction. Then the imported inputs going into value added products like cartons, tea bags, whatever it is, their prices increase in relation to the dollar, the local
with the depreciation.
So it's a very uncertain period that we are going through. If the dollar has to be at 200, we don't mind, but let it be at 200 and let it be there for a while, rather than changing it on a daily basis. Because now if you want to enter into a contract, you have to take a forward view. So you have to take a view that in 2 weeks or 1 month's time what the dollar would be, and based on that we have to enter into a contract.
But these are all hypothetical.
Hypothetical. So you are taking a risk as opposed to the common belief that the exporters are making money when the rupee is depreciating.
That seems to be the statement that a lot of these policymakers seem to run on. They say the devaluation of the rupee is good, our exporters earn more now.
You see, the saddest point, most of the politicians think like that.
Exactly.
They are the decision makers, they are the people who are supposed to be running this country.
They're the policymakers of the country.
They feel that the exporters are making money when the rupee is devalued. That is bunkum. When the rupee is devalued, there are so many other factors that affect the industry. The cost increase in terms of inputs. Then there is in a highly competitive marketplace, the prices are renegotiated in relation to the dollar's behavior or
so there's
the
a
rupee's
good chance
behavior.
that you might lose your contract.
You might lose your contract. So we are in a very vulnerable, highly volatile situation.
So as a businessman, if you could make one request to the government, there is no government right now, that's a controversial issue, a topic for another time, but if you can make a request to the policymakers of Sri Lanka, what would it be?
I think what the policymakers should do, they should not bring too much politics into business. You take the tea industry. I have taken this issue up several times publicly. The wage issue, and also the subsidies, and a de facto control economy for tea exports. All these are politically motivated issues, not commercial decisions. In a commercial decision, when you are working in an industry which attracts the global, which you are targeting the global market, you have to make commercial decisions, not political decisions. So what happens here? We have 300 million kilos produced in Sri Lanka. Whether you like it or not, we have to work within the 300 million kilos, where the outside Sri Lanka is 6 billion kilos. Now we are trying to take a share of the 6 billion with these 300 million. And that's the maximum you can go technically, because it's controlled and contained to 300 million. But if you are allowed to do rational business decisions in a commercial world, we have a much bigger chance of taking a portion of the 6 billion kilos.
So you're suggesting opening up Sri Lankan markets?
Either you open up, if you don't, like what we are seeing now, the exporters, will move out of this country and set up operations elsewhere, where you are not unnecessarily controlled in your business environment.
You said exporters will set up shop somewhere else. Have they already started?
They have already done. There are so many companies who are operating outside Sri Lanka. For instance, our company, we have set up operation in the US. We find it much better to deal from the US than from Sri Lanka, because for US, tea is not a major export item or import item. So your restrictions are primarily on commercial basis, not on political basis. Here, you are controlled politically because you are answerable, you are depending on a huge voter base in the upcountry, where the two Tamil political giants are fighting. Then you have down south, the private tea factory owners, where the politicians are begging for their vote. So they have to give them subsidies, they have to give them replanting aid, and they also have to control the prices by not allowing any tea to come into the country. So what are we looking at in the future?
So taking up this question regarding the salaries of estate worker employees, there were quite a lot of protests recently demanding for a salary hike from 600 rupees to 1000 rupees. Do you see this as a practical step?
I personally feel sorry for these workers, because I don't think they have a very good life up in the mountains or in the estates. But if an industry has to be viable, it has to be linked to productivity, not to handouts. So if you increase their salary in relation to productivity, I think they can earn more and the industry will survive. Otherwise, if you just give an increase from 600 to 1000 without a proper rhyme or reason, then again the problem will be with the government to give subsidies to the estates or the smallholders.
So regarding this, do you see the owners of tea estates or whoever the authorities complying with the demands made by these estate workers?
I think the main problem is with the plantation companies up in the upcountry and the mid-country region, together with the trade unions. I have a feeling that they will see some sort of sanity in what they are demanding, whether it's practical or not, because the tea prices are not something that will stay up forever. It's controlled by supply and demand. So in that situation, you must take a mid path of pricing and work your costs accordingly, not at the high point.
Exactly.
So what is happening right now, because we have had good prices, they are demanding high wages without looking at the productivity aspect.
So we are in discussion with former president of the Ceylon Tea Exporters Association. We will be right back after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching BizFirst in Focus. Welcome back. You're watching BizFirst in Focus. We're in conversation with Rohan Fernando. He is the past president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. Sir, getting back to the issues that we were facing here in the tea industry, specifically regarding the wages of these employees, you were saying you were speaking of how we could link their wages to productivity. Is there a possibility to formulate a wage pricing? A way to determine their wages based on the productivity of the industry? Is there a possibility there?
I think I read an article recently, I think yesterday or today, that on a scale of what they bring in terms of leave or the work, they quantify the work, there is a possibility a worker can earn up to about 50 to 60,000 a month. This is what I read in the reports.
Currently, how much do they earn in reality?
I think currently they earn about 20 to 30,000.
So that's close to double to triple.
This is the report I read.
Okay.
So I think that kind of a situation can be created by getting the workers to be efficient in what they do, and then link that to a better return on for their salaries, to get a higher package at the end of the day, rather than increasing a daily salary whether you work or not. So that way the worker will benefit and the industry will benefit.
So this seems like a viable solution to the problem that we're facing right now. I mean, there is no need of strikes and negotiations and all that. Why isn't this process just simply being implemented?
I think these are all trade union action that have been forced on the plantation companies. Let me explain another thing. Now, if you take the plantation companies itself, they are primarily a monocrop industry.
Okay.
And this has been passed down the British to us.
Yes.
But we are not evolved. I feel plantation companies also must take it upon themselves to diversify their plantations into from breaking this monocrop concept to a multifaceted industry.
Okay.
I think in fairness they also have certain restrictions from the golden shareholder, which is the government.
Okay.
There are a lot of restrictions placed on development of the industry. So I think the government together with the plantation companies and the trade unions sit around the table without discussing they always sit around to discuss the wage issue. But they must discuss how these can be modernized, how these can be diversified to get the maximum full benefit. These estates hold. There are a lot of water resources. There are a lot of area that have not been brought under T. Then you can have animal husbandry, poultry. So many things can be done. Fruit cultivation, hydropower generation, water, bottling of water, then tourism. I think if they bring all those aspects onto the table and design a model that the estates can work on multifaceted benefits for the worker, I am sure the worker problems can also be resolved through that.
Well, of course, it seems that our policymakers have more things to worry about right now at this very moment, given the current political crisis in the country. But I would like to direct this question to you. It's a bit out of topic, but anyways, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Fernando, as a businessman in this country, what do you feel about our policymakers and the current situation of this country? And have they paid any heed to your plight, the uncertainty in your industry, and the various other multi-problems that you will have to face given this political crisis?
I think as a non-apolitical person,
Okay.
a citizen of this country who has worked hard to develop a business in this country, the way I see this problem is I am taking this right down to the 1977 Constitution, where we change it to a proportionate
the electoral system,
where people came not even representing a constituency. And since then we have had 19 amendments. Now if you look at these amendments, why were these amendments brought in? Is it for the benefit of the country or for the benefit of the party and the MPs in power? I think the latter is the case. Even the 19th Amendment, if they were so conscious about the country, they should have brought in so many amendments, like crossing the divide, banning people from crossing from one party to other, then banning the sale of the duty-free vehicle, because they have come to serve, not to be served. Then in 5 years they get a pension. Why can't they also be brought under the same labor laws like you and me, who work hard? We are under certain labor rules, they can be brought in, and all these perks that be given. This is where the problem is. Even today, all these policy makers are not worried about the country. Right now they are arguing how to stay in power today until the next few years or whatever it is. So until that situation changes, I don't think we have a future for this country.
But Sri Lankan policymakers argue that they are fighting for your democracy. Do you feel that your democracy is being represented in the Sri Lankan political sphere?
I think the democracy is something that has to evolve with the people understanding what freedom is. Here the democracy is used only during election time to win the vote. After that, our rights are forgotten. Since after the election, they only work to get the maximum benefit for themselves, leaving the country aside. Otherwise, how do you explain a country at independence which had a surplus the treasury, where we were even able to give the crown a loan, and today we have become the beggar of Asia. How do you explain that? If all these politicians worked for this country, how do you explain that? And look at all the politicians, they came from rural areas. I think they came on bicycles. Today, the wealth they have amassed, how do you explain that? I think all these people have to explain that to the citizens of this country, how they became so rich by representing you and me in Parliament.
I believe that is quite a justifiable question, I would say. We will cross over for a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We got more on the other side of this short commercial break. Welcome back to BizFirst in Focus. We are in conversation with Rohan Fernando. He's a past president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Fernando, we discussed about the issues that the tea industry is facing in relation to this political crisis and before it. Then we discussed the current situation in our country. In this final segment of the program, I would like to discuss, where do we go from here? You're, of course, an entrepreneur. You know, risk management and all those other concepts that you used in developing your business. Applying those same concepts to the country, where do we go from here?
Look at Sri Lanka. We are a powerhouse. We have so much potential. If you set sail from southern Sri Lanka, you can go to Antarctica without encountering any landmass. That is the amount of sea we have at our disposal. Still we import fish from Chile. So if you look at all the positives we have, if they can bring it to the table without going into these political agendas, chintanas and all those things, if the industrialists and certain professionals get together and make a policy for Sri Lanka and tell the politicians, whether you blue, black, green or whatever it is, implement this policy rather than have a political agenda, that is the way we should go forward. Make use of the powers we have, the potential we have. We have educated populace in Sri Lanka. We have enough water in this country. We have a sun shining 365 days of the year. So we have all these God-given, riches for this country. So all we need to do is to have a national policy to go forward.
All we need to do is appoint or elect 225 sensible people that can run this country. But then that seems to be where Sri Lankans are failing. Appointing sensible people to represent them. Any advice that you can give to the general public on that front?
I think we must not let anybody who has a tainted past be elected. But for that, we must hold the political parties responsible not to put them for elections in the future.
But one of the main problems that we face are the leaders of these political parties themselves are tainted beyond repair.
This is the problem. So this is the million-dollar question. Where do we go from here? We have the potential. We can do. Sri Lanka can do, because we have people who have done before. But with this crop of politicians, do you think we can go forward? This is a million-dollar question.
But as a member of the Sri Lankan business community, do you see businessmen and professionals galvanizing, coming together to make a positive change on behalf of the country?
I think the time is right. All these trade chambers, where the export chambers, all these trade chambers get together, unify and tell the government, this is what we want from you. And we will support you if you take these our policies and debate and have a national policy. And by that you have to give a written undertaking that you will abide by this, and that should be a legal document where we can take you to court and take action if you violate that. I mean, that is one way I can think of taking this country forward, not otherwise.
So getting back to one of the main topic actually that we were supposed to discuss here, at least, the tea industry. Regarding issues of the tea industries more specifically, how do you feel that we should move forward from here?
You see, the tea industry is a very resilient industry, and that is, I would say, the second largest export earner for Sri Lanka after garments. And We have a lot of potential. We have built a lot of brands, global brands out of this country. So what we need is the industry to be recognized for its values and strengths. Now they have bundled the tea exports, plantations together, coming under the plantation ministry. I think they must first unbundle these two industries. Plantations must be run under the plantation ministry because they have the knowledge and they have the skills to do that. But the exports must come under the external trade ministry. And then from that point, we can harness the true potential of the tea export industry
in this country
vis-a-vis the global market demand. I think that is the way we can strengthen this industry and take this country forward, looking at a $5 billion in 5 years down the line as opposed to 1.5 billion we are struggling to make now.
So do you see that happening in the near future?
It can happen.
At the rate that the things are progressing right now?
But the root cause has to be cleared. That is our policy makers. Once the root cause is cleared, we can do it.
So you suggest more policymakers or more sensible policymakers?
I think we have too many policymakers. 225 is too much for this country to make
for
policies.
A population of 20 million.
20 million. I think we need a small cabinet of 35 who can have the right subjects under them without having too many ministries. They can consolidate. You look at the water, resource of water. Water is used for power generation, cultivation, drinking, and now we can even export water. A lot of countries are without water. So if you have this kind of rationalization in distributing the ministries and have a few ministers working with accountability, they should be given KPIs, job description and KPIs like in the private sector. Then
but unfortunately, when we here at News First ourselves requested Parliament for qualifications of our ministers under the Right to Information Act, we were denied access to that kind of information.
I wouldn't say only the educational qualifications would suffice. I mean, we have had people like D.S. Naika who has had the visionary leaders of this country. I would say they must have a good track record. They must have a proven track record.
Our current legislators seem to be lacking both.
They don't have anything. We don't know where they come from even. We only know that they have been in the ground level politician, and through thuggery, sometimes using funds, they have come to Parliament, and we have seen the net result recently from the behavior of these people.
Definitely, and thank you very much, Mr. Rohan Fernando, for joining us this evening. Our discussion was to be centered around the tea industry alone, but I believe we covered vast area from the political crisis to the tea industry to other issues that our country faced. And finally, of course, we discussed on a way to move forward. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And that was Biz First in Focus for this week. Do join us again next week for more business news. For now, take care and God bless.